reviewed or? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Any errors or omissions or motions to approve?
I am to approve.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Good. Motion carried unanimously. So the agenda's on, I go with, we're gonna do old business, new business, complaints, and then follow where that takes us. Under old business, we met at the end of December, middle to end of December, to put things together for the annual report, which we've put to paper, and it's due to be edited, revised, some formatting and or spelling issues that have come up. And so that will be done. The annual letter report will be completed in the next few days, and then that will go to the mayor and to the alderman at large for common council. Do you guys have any other old business?
Yeah, so I'm just sorry for notating, so it's gonna go to the mayor and then corporation council.
The mayor and the alderman at large, as the representative of the common council.
Okay.
So you distribute it as they need to. And, you know, corporation council will also receive.
Yeah. Yeah. October is.
Some other old business that will transition to new business is that the ethics board has had some opinions about and requested a review of the code and consideration of the, you know, the declaration, if that's what the common council wants it to say and mean and be, or do they want to consider a revision? Not that they need to consider a revision. So we've submitted letters to the common council, and I spoke with our alderman at large, and she's here tonight to hopefully share some information on what some of our possible plans may be.
Do you want me to do that?
Sure.
So probably close to a year ago, you guys presented that we wanted to look at it. The common council agreed that this ethics code needs to be examined. We've been tossing around who and how that is to be done, because as you can probably imagine, it's a mighty task. So Alan and I talked a couple weeks ago and then again today about the idea of perhaps having a working committee, or maybe a couple members of the ethics board, a couple members of the common council, and of course, a member of corporation council, to start thinking about some ideas so that we have actual concrete suggestions by looking at other municipalities, other codes, and then presenting that to, we could decide if it goes to the ethics board and then the common council, or directly to the common council. But we thought that could be a better way of getting more eyes and more the three, I guess, departments, so to speak, three boards, attention on us. That was our idea today.
Because it could be a monumental task. I mean, you know.
I knew it. I said so.
I know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we reviewed it, you know, I think to do it correctly will be time consuming. And part-time boards would be limited in the abilities to do that, but a task force or,
Yeah.
a coalition or whatever to look at it and say, well, what does it mean from this perspective? What does it mean from this perspective? What do we want it to mean? What does the people of the city of Kingston want it to say and mean?
And then more people to look at the variations in codes and other, exemplars of codes, who has a good working code that we admire. And I think, isn't there one that you had shared with me or I had shared with you? It's sort of like a model code. I shared that.
There's a few of them that we've been looking at, but, they're from different municipalities or different interests and, but, what it comes down to is that between us having the time and the opportunity to discuss it, say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean what we think it means, or what do you want it to mean? And then make sure that legally it means what we think it says. And then, that it would end up, if it's approved through that whole thing, back in the hands of the common council, because they would have to adopt it or not. And I'm thrilled to have the possibility of that happening, that it gets actually looked at from a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, with different depths of experience in terms of when things come up and what have we run into that has been problematic in the past, and there are people who will have more of an historic relationship with the document. And of course, the Corporation Council looking to make sure, as you had said, that it passes, legal muster, because we can want something, but if it isn't rooted in what state code is that where the.
Yeah, the general municipal laws.
Yeah,
So
still needs to be rooted in that in order to be an effective, useful code.
And even the possibility is might be just on the council, when it gets to the council's hands, is to some form of public outreach, public hearings.
Yeah.
Which I also think it will be important to do that.
Yes.
Good.
So we can decide when, how many, and when in the process. But I think this is something the public will want to be engaged with. I think it's important to do that.
And then, the public can understand, we can understand, employees and officials can understand the scope of the ethics code and the board and the limitations. What the jurisdictions are and where they are not. Because that takes some study and get used to.
Well, and it's also so much of, what we really care about, which is you said from the beginning, which is the education, that this is really what we care about, is educating people and being a body that is not, whose focus is in hopefully prevention rather than punitive measures, that if people know what is an ethics violation, it could hopefully steer people in the right direction, or at least lead them to the right agency initially, because it's frustrating. You see something that you don't like, you want something to be done, and it's upsetting as a citizen. But you don't really know what is an ethics board, what do they do?
What does the code mean?
What does the code mean? We're a volunteer board, we meet when we get a complaint, it's not like we're here every week, and so again, when time gets taken up, so how do we make it more efficient?
Right. So I'm thrilled that with your participation and your leadership, I appreciate it.
Of course, but now we just need the volunteers.
Well, of course, Al's volunteering, so don't worry.
Well, I see her hand is up. Her hand is up, like that. Yeah.
I would be very interested. Yeah.
So I'll talk to council members and see, and then
Yeah.
we'll go back around and figure out the logistics of making it happen.
Very cool.
Cool, man.
Would this be a good one, since Andrea's here, to also mention the idea of the simplified educational.
It would be a good time to mention whatever you'd like to mention about,
Okay.
including The other thing that we want to look at is the disclosure forms.
Yes, yes.
There's been, we've met with resistance in trying to get them. We've gotten them. But, you know, people have a lot of questions about, is all of that actually needed? And so we're going to hope to review and clarify all of that.
Having them written to in a simpler, obviously meeting the letter of the law, but again, you know, I mean, the first time I did, I had to call my accountant and say, well, what does this mean? And, you know, so, you know, when people in a professional position don't even understand what the language means, it's intimidating. And so you want compliance, but you don't want people to wonder, well, what is this? What does it even mean? Do I have a trust in a blah, blah, blah? And it's very cumbersome. So I think that may be what's preventing some people from getting it done. Not knowing what it means and who to call if they don't understand. So that was one piece. And the other piece we had hoped to do was to, again, you know, reading the code, it's for attorneys. And I think Al, when we first spoke, mentioned this idea, which I thought was wonderful, which was to create something really simple that, you know, would obviously be reviewed by Corporation Counsel to make sure that we're not misinterpreting anything, but to give people a basic idea of what is an ethics violation. When would you contact the ethics board? What meets the level of an ethics violation? And then, of course, how to reach us. And so how to be an educational tool so that people, so that every employee and every board member, it could be available for the public, just to have so that they're not reading through this and their eyes are glazing over. So that was, but again, I think maybe would happen after we revise, but as some, like a goal for this year. Is something we love to do. So you see this like a nice handout to give to a new employee, to give each year with the financial disclosure, just a reminder. So that, again, with our names on it, here's how you get in touch with us, so it's not some mystery.
That's great, yeah.
And we've been pushing that, but you know, I think part of the pushback that I got was that let's clarify the code before we try to write something that it doesn't make sense. If the
It
code is
explains the
right.
code that's not written.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we're gonna write it, yeah.
It's in our head.
Yeah, so that, you know, my understanding is, and I don't know if it's correct, is that when new employees and officials come on, they're given all of this packets and paperwork. And many people that I know that have been a new employee anywhere get a pile of paper that they look at, but how thoroughly do they go through? Probably everyone doesn't go through it.
No, but at least it would be there if we made a.
There with a cheat sheet, you know.
Yeah, and friendly enough as a way of making it less intimidating.
Yeah.
So I guess the first step would be the task force, then the second step would be reviewing once we know what maybe at the same time we can look at financial disclosures, because that's not going to change based on the code. That's just a matter of maybe working with Corporation Counsel to find a simpler way to, like, how can we reduce the linguistic impediments? And then after we get the code reviewed, approved, public hearings, whatever, then we can produce the document. So
Roadmap.
a roadmap. I like roadmaps.
We have a plan. And so we will have a couple of members of the ethics board who are certainly willing to do that, to participate. And, you know, if you determine how many, then see
Yeah,
which people.
maybe not like you talk logistics.
Yeah. And then is there, I don't know how long it might take to get a task force together, weeks, months.
I would think it could be weeks. I mean, council has a couple really huge tasks in front of us right now, but one of them, the redistricting, will be over soon. So I think this could be something that we put on the front burner.
Yeah, so February, March.
I
March?
could try and twist a couple arms by then.
Okay. Good, I mean, I think it's just like, in terms of a goal, it would be good to say by the end of 2023, we would have those three things done. Revised code, new financial disclosure form, and this educational piece would be pretty mighty.
Well, a review code,
Yes.
we consider revisions. Well, because we don't know what the test was. They might say, that code is beautiful.
That's true,
They may not.
right.
Um,
So a code, that's right, that's at least reviewed.
Right. And then from there, the other things could more easily fall in place. So I appreciate the enthusiasm of members of the ethics board. I think it's wonderful. And corporation council and of course our law has always been supportive. Anything else on that? Anything you want to tell us? No. Okay. So is there any other new business that the board has? Good. Well, we have complaints. We are in the, we have a complaint review in process. And we have 3 new complaints. 2 which this board will hear, and 1 which will be passed through to the mayor's office and for review.
That is correct.
And so, are there any other new business items? If not, the complaints would pursuant to Public Officers Law 105, 1F. The board shall go into an executive session for all discussions on employment history of a particular person or matters leading to demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person. In effect, to discuss any of complaints against an official or an employee.
Have a motion to go into executive
Mr.
session.
Chairman, before you go into your vote for executive session, my understanding is that there are complaints that have not been addressed along a window of perhaps a year or 2. And could you elaborate on where certain complaints are at this juncture?
I believe I just did, to the best of my knowledge, there is 1 complaint that's outstanding that we've met on.
And that complaint perhaps is from 2020?
No. No, it's a more recent.
Are there any complaints outstanding from 2
No,
years ago?
no outstanding complaints from 2 years ago.
Okay. All right, so tonight you're going to perhaps be addressing my complaints. I have 3 complaints.
Yes, you do.
I-
We will,
And are they numbered accordingly so that if I were to inquire the status of them at some point, because I'm not advised of of whether they're on the agenda.
You,
I'm not informed,
you will be advised on the.
because there's no communication. There's no communication between you or the clerk's office or the corporation counsel or whoever. If you're going to, a suggestion, Andrea, would be if you're going to redo the ethics law itself, there might be a section in there that specifies
The process.
of how long it takes for the board to address, finalize discharge. And in my mind, a year, 2 years is just not acceptable
We
for
don't have any
anybody.
that are,
Well, my understanding, and I'm relying on a morning show and on Saturday mornings on a local radio station, and it's brought up periodically that there is an outstanding complaint, has not been addressed, has not been discharged, and there's been no communication. So I'm not even
It
sure.
appears there's only 4 complaints that are currently before this board, all of which were filed in 2022, 3 of which are yours, and 1 of which is actually, so there's actually technically 3 complaints, because 1 of your complaints has to by law be referred elsewhere.
Because it's
But all
pertaining
of the
to
ones that
this
are
board.
currently, yeah, and for confidentiality purposes, that's why things are not discussed. So your complaint probably should not be discussed in that fashion here, especially since it's not going to be before this board.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of the 3 complaints that are before the board, 2 of which are yours, once they go into executive session, I believe you will be given an opportunity, since you are the person making the 2 complaints, to be called in and to basically give testimony, to tell the board, elaborate on what you wrote in your complaints.
Okay, now,
So
the reasoning for going into executive session.
So under, as the chairperson did mention, that public officers law does require, since all of these are allegations that pertain to employees and can result in employee discipline, public officers law 105(1)(f) requires that we go into executive session for confidentiality purposes. So right now, these complaints are allegations. Nothing's been proven, okay? So all of these individuals that you or other complaints are complaining about, they do have a right to their privacy, and there's confidentiality until these allegations have been otherwise proven.
Could I elaborate on one of them?
So here's the thing. He was in the middle of making a motion to go into executive session so we could talk about these individual things in which privacy is a legal concern. So if you want to, once they call you in for your testimony pertaining to your complaints, then that would be the most appropriate time for you to elaborate on. Do you understand?
I do understand, but one of them is really not one for going into executive session, because the one has already been announced in one of the local media outlets.
Regardless of whether someone else has violated confidentiality and privacy purposes, the board does not want to further that, okay? So the board doesn't, for the purpose of discussions here at the board meeting, even whether it's been mentioned elsewhere or not, we still try to maintain privacy here when they're doing the board meetings, so that it can never be said that the board has violated the law or someone's confidentiality.
Okay.
All right?
On that question, this board has been functioning under these bylaws for the past 6 years. And it behooves me now that you're bringing it before the council to have it reviewed, okay, at this point in time, when you were working under them for the past 6 years, okay? The other issue upon that is you formulated these here bylaws, coordinated, I believe, with the county, because you took view the county's ethics laws and put them into our own ethics laws of the city of Kingston, some of them. The other thing I want to mention what the corporate counsel just said, when you go into executive session on your charges, you call the person back and allow him to elaborate on his charges. Well, I brought charges up here. They went into an executive session. I was called back in and they told me, Mr. DeFalco, we dismissed your charges. And they did not allow me to prosecute my charges of improprieties. Okay? So when you said, we're going to call you back so you can elaborate on your charges, that didn't happen to me.
So the board conducts an investigation. Is this matter currently pending, the matter you're
No,
discussing?
this is over. This is
Okay,
over.
so that's over.
This
That's
happened
something-
here.
Yeah.
This happened with this executive.
As part of
board.
their investigation, they can call witnesses, but you have no individual right to, you make
No,
a complaint.
Well, they
And
didn't
I
show
don't know the circumstances, plus that,
But
that
they didn't show up.
circumstance is not
There was
here.
nobody there but me to elaborate on my charges. Oh, Mr. DeFalco, we dismissed your charges, okay? It was.
That is something that you should have taken up at the time, but that's not something that's
No,
currently
but
on
I'm
the
just saying,
agenda.
these are the things this ethics board has done.
Well,
Mr. Mace had done it. Mr. DeFalco, I never forget your words. We dismissed your charges. And I told you that you
Again,
did
Mr.
not allow me
DeFalco,
to prosecute my charges, and I thought that that was unethical of you.
Mr. DeFalco,
I'm letting you
if
know.
you have an issue that regards, something that's occurred in the past, that you believe you have, the right to pursue, you can consult an attorney, see if that's something that you can appeal. If it's not something that you can appeal, but right now, this is not the
No,
proper
I
venue.
just
The
told you
proper
what
venue
transpired.
would be at the time that
I
something is.
just told you what they did. And this, I didn't care. They did it. All right, there's nothing I could do
So
about it.
if you have a problem with the issues that are currently before the board now, then we can address those, but this isn't.
I'm just saying,
This is-
this board conducted themselves in the past. This board has operated on these bylaws for the past 6 years. And all of a sudden now you're requesting a review of the board, the ethics bylaws?
can I speak to that? Because I would like to respond.
You would like to respond?
I would-
Well, that's what's going on.
Mr. DeFalco, you're being disrespectful
Respond.
right now.
I'll
It's
allow you
not
to
okay.
Excuse me?
It's not okay to be disrespectful. No one's being
I'm not being
disrespectful.
respectful.
Well, you're
Go ahead.
cutting me off. I just want to say, I've been on the board for 1.5 years, so I'm
You weren't
sorry.
here.
I'm sorry about your history. I think that many boards, I just don't care for the insinuation that there's something unethical
It's a matter of. record.
about looking at, every board should look at the code. That's a responsibility of a board to say, have we kept up? Are there changes in the law? Do we want to look and see, not everybody's code it's not a cookie cutter.
6 years.
Can I finish? Not every, the law is a living creature, I think, and that you do need to, it's a responsibility of a board to say, are we keeping up? And do other cities have a model that we might benefit from to benefit the people of the community? And so it doesn't happen every year. It's a huge job, as you just heard. It's going to take us probably a good year.
That's why
And
that's why you confer with the county's ethics laws and try to intermesh that with yours. They took some from the county and put them into your bylaws.
that certainly could become part of the process, but it's a
But
process.
6 years, all of a sudden, now
Okay.
you're reviewing it.
I said process.
So the one thing that I just want to bring to evidence, and I understand you have concerns from the past that you want to voice, but we have till 6:30 and there's another meeting coming in. So if you do want us to be able to address some of these complaints that you made, including a complaint that they're not being addressed fast enough, we need to get this going. So,
Okay. One more thing, when they investigate the ethics board, the mayor is going to conduct an investigation.
yes.
I can address it with him. How does that the ethics board operated for the past 6 years? How unethical they were when I brought charges up.
You can put whatever questions,
Okay.
anything you have in writing. But for the purposes of tonight, as I said, we're on a very limited time schedule. And as you know, we have complaints to address. So why don't we get that started
And you
and
can
then
get
you
started,
can,
and I'll come back to, when the mayor conducts an investigation, I will appreciate, when I attend it, you know? Tell them how this board operated for 6 years. You operated for 6 years under the ethics laws that you have. Now, it confused me why all of a sudden you,
motion to go into executive session?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Seconded it? No.
There are a vote to come out of executive session, one in favor, two in favor, all in favor. At, sorry, 6:30 PM, we're coming out of executive session. We have,
There's no other business.
we want to resolve it one.
Oh, yeah.
We reviewed a number of complaints and we resolved number.
09092022-1.
Good memory. We resolved that is, there was no determination or evidence of an ethical.
Is there a continuation
um,
or are they going to
That's
be?
not your.
That's
not
a
your
different one,
complaint.
different
case.
different
Different case.
complaint.
Yeah.
So that's resolved. The other ones that were discussed, we'll look further into them and maybe
Yes.
got.
May I ask, are any of your appointments coming up for reappointment or?
I don't know when everybody's.
I have it every year and a half.
Yeah, I do.
How about we discuss that?
Yeah, so we need to vacate the room, I believe. So is there a motion to close the meeting?
Make a motion to close.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Meeting is closed at 6:32 PM.
Thank you.
The finance and audit.
Oh, I'm
Yes,
not
it has
staying, I'm
something.
gonna go,